Welcome. I'm Will Marsh, usually your host with Luke Smith of The Way We See It with Will and Luke. I am here today with Luke.
What's up, guys?
And we have a very special guest with us who we're going to introduce momentarily. This special series that we're about to bring to you now is a short series. As of now, it's going to be in 10 parts, named Declassified, What Lies Behind America. Now, what is that, you may ask? And hey, we're going to get into that. We have a bunch of incredible and interesting topics we're going to bring you that you may not believe. From undercover CIA operations over the last 80 years to some of the biggest government conspiracies you may have heard or not heard of. So before we go any forward, I want to bring on Luke. Luke, you're here with us, right?
Yeah, man.
I can see you on the screen. That's good. Do you have anything you want to share before we go forward?
I think this is going to be awesome. I'm excited for you guys to hear what we've dug up and all the evidence and stuff we have to see. And also, I'm a little bit of a little skeptic. So we'll see. But yeah,
I like that. You know, we can't all agree, which is why we have a group here. So before we go any forward, you have known Luke and I from our series and our YouTube channel, as well as our show on Apple Podcasts. We have a new cast member joining us for this series and more because of his value and input and expertise in these subjects. It's a serious matter. Anything that we talk about here, we're going to be able to cite. But we need to bring in the experts here, which is why, before we go any further, if I had a drum or a drum roll, I would be doing it right now. We have Garrett Maney out of Guilford County with us. Garrett, are you here?
Yes, I am. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited about this show, and I look forward to how this develops moving forward.
Yeah, I'm excited. So, Garrett, you have, I know there's a bunch of distance in between us. Luke's joining us right now out of Washington, D.C. I'm over here in the capital city of North Carolina in Raleigh, and you're kind of way out west working on some stuff out there, I know right now. So what are we going to talk about tonight?
Tonight we're going to be talking about what's called Operation Paperclip, which was in 1945, after the end of World War II. The United States government decided to take in over 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians, including psychologists, and we'll get into why that's important later on. The gist of it was they found this site where they were developing the V-2 rocket in Germany, and they said, well, we need this for our advanced warfare moving forward, so why don't we just free all these guys of their crimes, we won't try them for anything, but they'll come work for the U.S. government. And everyone was cool with it. So they did that. They developed the rocket. We went to the moon. You know the rest. But there's a lot more.
That, at first when you say that sounds messed up because the Nazis did terrible things. But I do want to ask one question. I'm sure there's a factor in this of, if we didn't do this, who would?
Probably Russia.
That
probably would have done this. Or they would have been tried for their crimes and probably murdered.
That's true too. I'm sorry, I'm plugging my computer back in. It seemed
That's all right.
Fall out of the cord here real quick. So Garrett, what year did this start? Well, I guess the year that World War II begun to close to an end. It was at 1945.
I think 44, 43 is when it really started closing. It finalized in 45, which is the year Operation Paperclip went into effect. I'd like someone else to interject, see any questions, see where you can lead this, and happy to go on down a rabbit hole if we must.
Yeah, so Operation Paperclip, it's been rumored, and I don't know this, the reason why it was called, or where Operation Paperclip got its name, is essentially because they were able to completely whitewash all of the documents of these people and get away with it, down to where the only impression left of them was the paperclip emblem on a blank piece of paper, which is why they called it Operation Paperclip. Is that a myth,
right,
or is that true?
No, that's true. I mean, in essence, really, it was a giant human trafficking campaign, if you really want to look at it for what it is.
Well, I've never thought about it like that. We've always thought of it as kind of a backwards war crime that we did that nobody understood. but essentially it was human trafficking, even though we got a result out of it. Because I think, Garrett, you mentioned a moment ago that, the reason why we did it, or, if we didn't do it, Russia may have been, or the Soviets may have beat us to it, but as a result, we also got to beat them to the moon.
Yeah, we did beat them to the moon, and then you'll notice if you actually pay attention to John F. Kennedy, he warned shortly before his death that the now growing industrial military complex with the new CIA that was only 20 years old at the time, thanks to these new Nazis, their technology, their research, and their psychological operations, was basically taking over the country. Basically, we took the Nazis who had lost the war and infiltrated them into our own government like complete and total morons, in my opinion. And now we're today, in today's exact state where we are as a country, is a direct result of those things.
Yeah, it's incredible, really, the effects that history has, and the decisions that presidents or world organizations make, and the repercussions about how, they don't normally happen even in those people's lifetime, and how the ripples of that will go on for generations or hundreds of years. Which is why one of the things I'd like to explore on the subject of Operation Paperclip is, in addition, everybody talks about the space program, but if we could, and I don't want to jump too far ahead here, Garrett. Without jumping ahead, what are some of the other effects of this operation and the repercussions for America specifically, other than the space program, that have happened since in between now and then?
So aside from what I just touched, the growing military-industrial complex, what you saw was actually the reason Germany was winning most of the wars, because of how advanced they were, thanks to these talented scientists, etc. Wasted it.
I'm sorry, my phone was dying and I was plugging it back in here.
That's no problem. If you look into the things that the Nazis were experimenting on in their own country, these exact same scientists, they were experimenting on things like, let's say, pandemics, modern ethics, blood contagions, bombs, poisons, fertility, experimenting with the drinking water, a lot of sketchy things. They had an entire test from 43 to 45 in the concentration camps on epidemics, where they were trying to see if they could cause mass spread of a disease to wipe out people quickly. Pretty interesting stuff. Now,
Garrett, I assume you read this somewhere, or you have a source for this information.
Yeah, I can source this information.
Okay, we'll loop back around to that at the end of this episode, because I don't want to tie up time with that, of course, as we go. But on that question, we found this out after the fact, of course. I know that after Nazi Germany fell, that for years and years and years, both the Americans, the Soviets, the British government, probably other people that I haven't listed or we don't know about, spent years and decades sifting through Nazi records, both because there were so many of them and there was so much to go through, and because they had to decode so much of the content, and the only people that could decode it weren't around anymore. They were either dead or, in America or in Russia.
Exactly.
Under a different identity, didn't exist. Yeah. So that being said, when did we start to discover all this? I know you're talking about some of these horrific tests that were being done because of the Nazi science and whatnot, but were we knowing these things, as they happened, or was the American CIA aware of this as it was going on, or was it just, did we find these out later on in the Nazi records?
Interesting that you mentioned that. The CIA didn't exist until 1947, 2 years after we took in these Nazis.
That's officially, though, right?
That's officially, yeah. They were called something else. They changed into a centralized, and that's when things really got wonky. But we'll have to touch on that in another episode, because that's a whole rabbit hole of its own. But yeah. So go back to what you were saying. Yeah. So it was rumored, that they may or may not have known these things. I personally think at least some officials in government probably did. I don't think it's a random occurrence that we got lucky enough to get the 1,600 rocket scientists.
Yeah, I was going to say, Garrett, do you think that we were powerful enough and smart enough and force and clearly had the intelligence to dominate and win the Second World War? And we were losing our ass for a long time in that. To only not have that intelligence at all about what was going on in Nazi Germany right after the war ended. I mean, that seems.
So, I'll touch on this, and you can fact check me on this.
No, these are just questions.
Before World War shortly in this, I'll make this my precedence. Shortly before World War II, there was an attempted coup within our own government from our military, where the general of the United States Army at the time was offered somewhere close to, I believe it's about $2 billion from a global group of business owners and bankers to overtake Washington and overthrow our government. So I think that we lost World War II. I think the Nazis won. I think that everything going on is a scam. Sorry for my language, is a scam. And it's basically, I think things are going to come into fruition to prove that to be true upcoming in the next decade or so. I mean, even when we
hang on, Garrett.
Currency.
I hate to interrupt. Oh, Luke, are you there with us still?
Yeah, that's
all right.
Wow, man.
So yeah, hang on. There's so much in that last statement we need to unpack. First off, that this is a scam, and the Nazis really won the war. The first second, I was like, hold on. And then the more I thought about that, I'm like, all the Nazis got paid crap loads of money. They got immigrated to America. They got status and money and freedom. They got washed of all their crimes. America took the bill. America had to float the bill for the entire war because they subsidized it for all the countries that lost and won.
And here's what I have to say about a world war. Who's funding it? Isn't it ironic that Switzerland, who's a neighbor of Germany, can be called neutral when they're funding both sides? Wouldn't that make you the one controlling the war? If you're the bankroll for both sides, there's no neutrality in a world war.
Well, to be fair, everybody likes their money. That's just something I want to keep close. And I don't know if it's good or bad that they almost have a neutral zone that they both respect so they can do banking. Shady banking, I know.
Oh, there's no respect in global banking. I mean, look at the Federal Reserve and what's done to the United States currency.
Luke, chime in here. What do you think about this? What do you have for Garrett as we're unpacking all this?
It kind of makes sense, how everything's going towards that way now. I don't know. That's just wild. I've never heard of anything like that. That's seriously crazy. I'm trying to wrap my head around it.
This is all documented history, though. I mean, and this really isn't that wild. I mean, this was a long time ago, Garrett. There's a lot more that will build up to more recently as we continue to do this series, What Lies Behind America. But right now, as we focus on Operation Paperclip, I want to get back to what Garrett was saying. On this, you were saying not the operation, but the CIA didn't officially form until 1947, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, but if the war ended in 45, and I may need to just double check that year, in fact, real quick, but if the war ended in 45, how did the CIA import them and set all that up if they didn't even exist?
Well, like I was saying earlier, actually, they were imported by what was called at the time the Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency, and in partnership with the U.S. Army's own special forces called the Counterintelligence Corps.
Okay, because that was going to bring me to a question. Is how did they get them here? Obviously, I'm assuming they didn't go through Ellis Island.
That's right.
So did the Army just fly them in on cargo planes? Did they go in on submarines? How did these guys get here with their wives and all?
That's a good question, and I honestly haven't looked that much into that. So the official story is they captured them and then smuggled them in. I know Truman's made comments later on about, he was kind of reluctant to approve Operation Paperclip. But his fear of Russia, basically, is the official story. His fear of Russia doing the same thing gave him no choice.
Do you agree with him on the matter?
Sorry, my phone just went to 20%.
You're fine. I was asking if you agreed with Truman on the decision, on the executive decision to do so. Did you agree with President Truman?
Like I said, my personal view is that's all bullcrap and it's kind of a scam. But no, I don't agree with President Truman at all.
Do you think that the Nazis are in the government now, the scientists and everything? They are like doing propaganda and everything?
100%. I mean, the Nazis were the kings of propaganda, and goodness, if we haven't gotten so good on it. We are. I mean, we are just so great. I mean, we're rivaling Soviet Russia the way we're pumping stuff out today.
True. So what's the name of that Amazon Prime series on the Nazi hunters that hunt people, as part of Operation Paperclip? Y'all know what I'm talking about?
I'm not familiar with it.
It's the best series I've ever watched. I want to bring it up real quick because it's on this operation.
Is it called Operation Paperclip?
No.
I think it's called Nazi Hunter.
Or Hunters.
Nazi Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen it, Luke?
Check that out then.
I've scrolled past it a couple times.
It is the coolest show I have ever watched.
I just started watching this.
It's called Hunters. Yeah, so Garrett, look up Hunters. It's an Amazon Prime show, and it's got a couple seasons or at least one or two, but it's a brand new make, and it's on these people. They're Jewish people, and they're all like people of like rich fame or status. That it's like 20 years after World War II. They're in New York in the Jewish community. One's like an actor, banker, like all these, but like they're actually Nazi hunters, and they track down like they get like CIA information because they have contacts everywhere, and they hunt down like prominent Nazis all over the world and go like take them out. It's super cool.
That's wild.
Very cinematic. Wow. But the whole purpose of the show, right, was to shed light on Operation Paperclip. And actually, I think, Garrett, as a result of this operation and the discovery of Operation Paperclip being found out, I think a lot of people did become Nazi hunters and start tracking these people down and trying to bring them in for their war crimes, right?
Oh, yeah. The Justice Department ended up forming their own Nazi hunters, separate from Operation Paperclip, like this going up until the 80s, right?
Are you saying that's oh shit, cover our ass committee?
Maybe. I think the members of the committee, much like the DEA, are unaware that they're fighting themselves.
True. They just kind of they just make themselves go in a circle.
Yeah, they're making money off both sides, right? So there was a case in 1980 where FBI officials refused to tell the Justice Department's own Nazi hunters that what they knew about 16 suspected Nazis living in the United States, probably because they were involved with the government. And as far as 1990, the Cold War, the United States on record used up to over 1,000 Nazis in their fight against Russia in the Cold War, as late as the 90s. Wow. So Nazis, to answer your question, touch back with Luke about if I think they're still involved with the government. Not only do I think they're still involved with the government, I think it's public information they're involved with the government. People just don't want to seek it out.
Okay, so hey, Luke.
Yo.
So, one thing I want to dissect with Garrett here real quick. He mentioned that he didn't think President Truman made the right, or that he wouldn't have agreed, or he wouldn't have done the same decision that President Truman did to allow the Nazis to come in here, even after the fact that they had the knowledge that the Russians were trying to recruit them themselves. So, Garrett, even though that you're saying that the fact that we had them, we kept Russia from getting them, that they helped get us to space first, and they helped us beat Russia in the Cold War, you still think it was the wrong decision to bring them here because of their past crimes? And by means, I am not endorsing Operation Paperclip. And me as a show or Luke, I'm just
we probably didn't treat them like kings though when we brought them here. I'm sure we didn't like roll out the red carpet for them and everything.
Well, yeah, they were in witness protection. They were. Hosmidge Heismeal, of the Third Reich, and, over here they became, John Smith of Huntsville, Alabama. So.
That's right.
They were always.
So, see, the reason I have my view is I think it didn't matter where they went. I think it was a Trojan horse, basically. I think if they went to Russia, they would have done the same thing in Russia. Russia would have gone to the moon first.
Wait, so Garrett, you're saying you think these Nazis still, even though they took our offer, they still remained loyal to the Nazi or German cause, and they infiltrated our government?
I mean, yeah, you don't kill 6 million people, and then suddenly when someone offers you a paycheck, change your views, would you?
No, that's
they
pretty
wanted for money.
Yeah. I mean, they were nothing about money. They were trying to change the world, and they were trying to change humanity for the rest of existence.
Exactly. And I mean, if you look at the experiments the Nazis were doing, and actually go into the programs and things they've decoded, and actually what their goal for the world was, because it's not just all about killing the Jews. Yeah, Hitler hated Jews because he didn't like liberalism, and he didn't like what had happened in Russia. It's all laid out in Mein Kampf if you've ever read the book. It's not a racial prejudice, and he didn't even hate the Jewish religion. He was a horrible person. I would almost say he's like an antichrist type figure.
Yeah, because it wasn't about hatred for Jews, right? Like it was just a true belief of like a pure Aryan, side religion tainted form, purist race.
So he had got recruited by an offset of some people who were formerly Freemasons that went off to form their own group called the Teal Society, which basically believed the ancient Atlanteans were still alive, and that Atlantis was a real place, that there was a one pure race, and blah blah blah, all this brainwashing nonsense. They basically made him a puppet, really. I mean, they found this guy who could passionately speak to the people, filled his head with all this nonsense, and made him use his hatred to follow their goals, which under the guise of hating Jews was world domination in essence, And I think that group, whether it's about race or whatever, I think they're still in power. I mean, I think there's a cabal of people in power that there's no beating them. It's too deep, the deep state.
So how do you join them?
I don't think you do.
Who would you think, or do you think do you have any conspiracies on who is from the Nazi deep state from back then still? And our government?
So, I mean, I 100% do. I even have some factual information to support it, and not just, conspiracy and my own thoughts. So you look at Prescott Bush, who was George H.W. Bush's father, right? George H.W. Bush later went on to become president and lead the CIA. His father actually funded Nazi defense operations and was almost tried for treason for it, actually.
What?
Whose father did
that? George H.W. Bush's father, Prescott Bush.
That was my first guess. There's no surprise there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I don't want to get off on a tangent about Bush. We're talking about Bush 41.
No, we're not talking. He was asking me about who may still be related to that cause.
Oh yeah, but the Bush you were talking about, I was referring, it was 41's father you're talking about. Because 43's father would have been Bush 41. No, y'all want to know about Bush 41's character? Y'all Google Highway to Hell in Kuwait.
Oh yeah. The guy was, not the most moral guy.
He was on warpath, so he killed over 4,000 innocent people on the highway between 200 countries.
Right. Shocker that he was the leader of the CIA for quite a while as well.
It was nothing. 9/11 was nothing compared to what he did over there. So no wonder they hate us. But anyway, those are all these subjects. So as we continue through this series, Declassified: What Lies Behind America, a lot of these subjects that we hit on, we will actually get to as we progress, as we build up in history. But we want to stay focused for the time being. But we will come to these things. Just bear with us and continue to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. So. Sorry, Garrett, you were saying, though, we were talking about the legacy, and then I chimed in when I got back. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, so what I have to say is just follow the money. And I mean, go back to the French Revolution. I mean, if you follow the money back there, it stays in the same hands ever since, and it never exchanges again. That's something you can research on your own time and look into, but it's all there, and it's all available for you to see.
Now, Garrett, the French had a lot of revolutions. Which one was this?
Napoleon.
Okay.
Napoleon era.
So, and they held on to the money the entire time, you're saying?
The people who funded him and the people who funded his enemies are still the same people that funded World War II, same people funding the Russians and the Americans. Yeah, it's the same bankers, it's the same banking families. It's unfortunate what's happened. We got overtaken by currency, the guise of it. It's pretty funny.
Okay.
Really smart people, really, really intelligent people. I mean, props to them. I love playing chess. These guys are great at it.
Luke,
Yeah.
you hearing this?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I think there's a few things, Luke, and I want to explore here, Garrett. So,
Yeah.
Luke, the first thing I want to dive into, Garrett's just mentioned that about the people or the guys that were funding World War II and funding all of this. So, if this is true, one, who specifically is the organizations or the people or the families or the countries or the whatevers that had the financial interests
Like the rock.
stirring up this war? And then
That's exactly right.
And then how did they profit after the fact? Because I have a feeling that this Operation Paperclip ties into the international money that was exchanged throughout all this.
So if you let me go, so to touch on that, you have to understand what fractional reserve banking is. So there's actually nothing that backs our money anymore. It has been a really long time. So these people, they're genius. I mean, these guys are so smart. They're selling governments money on interest. I mean, it's so smart. So no matter what they're doing, they're indebting the world to themselves. It's so smart. I mean, I'm mad I didn't think of it.
So again, who are these people?
They're the global bankers.
Okay.
You have the Rothschilds, the Rockefeller family's involved in global banking, the Federal Reserve,
I understand. Yeah,
World Bank.
There's lots of global money, and people who understand that, or you can look at. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's spread off, and
there's change, and in a few years there'll be like 3 banks left. They keep just buying each other up, like just eat like sharks eating each other. That's wild. Okay. So Garrett, so if somebody wanted to check into this, what are some of the sources that you use or have used for some of this information?
just go to a list of global banks and then their founding members. And
No, I'm sorry. I mean
back.
Operation Paperclip in general. So the
Operation
smuggling,
Paperclip. So it's really hard to get too much into other than the official story. You can find certain interviews and things like that through your own research. They're kind of hard to find these days. But I mean, the internet's your friend, but just you got to be real cautious what you read. Make sure everything you're reading is sourced. If it's through a media organization, look into the person reporting it and who wrote it, and the history of their work. It's like you're in college. You really got to work hard to make sure you're learning the correct things.
Hey, I've got a question for everybody on here. So, Garrett, when you were saying that it was hard to find, for those listening and for me on this right now, I just Googled Operation Paperclip. The top link that came up was a Wikipedia page on this. I'll go around the room real quick because I want to hear from everybody. But Luke, in general, how credible is Wikipedia, do you think, or to you?
Dude, all right, so citing things is literally...
We're going to play a game called Read Wikipedia.
They have... I wouldn't say too much at all.
Okay.
Not very credible.
Thumbs down. By the way, we've been introducing new people on this episode. Y'all heard a lot from Garrett so far. I want to touch on Aya for a moment. Those of you who have followed me in my life the past, I don't know, what has it been, 7 or 8 years?
I can't remember. I think that was about 7 years ago.
It's been a while. So before we did this show, I worked in a different industry in sales and insurance, and Aya has worked with me for about 7 or 8 years now. Aya does a variation of tasks. She does our web design. She handles all of our social media, both for me and the show, and handles all of our posting and is our producer and video editor. But she also is on some of our episodes like tonight. So we love hearing from her, and you're representing Aya. Thank you. Hey, Aya, while we have you, do you have any questions for Garrett as we've been going through this? I know we've been going through a lot of information.
None, actually. I've been interested in the topic, and as of the moment, to tell you honestly, while Garrett is discussing it, I'm checking on Google, reading a lot of history and some stuff, and I'm learning a lot. Thank you so much, Garrett.
Hey, it's no problem. Thank you for looking into it, Aya.
By the time this episode gets out on YouTube and wherever, Aya will be publishing and managing the description, and she will have some links in the description as well that you can check out Operation Paperclip. So we will dive into a bunch of stuff as we go through this. You mentioned to me that these Nazi scientists, obviously we were talking about how they built space. You informed me about the Cold War aspect of it and how they led us to kind of outsmart the Russians. You know, during this time, we also, as America, went through what we called an industrial revolution. We had we built an interstate system. There was all kinds of infrastructure that happened throughout America. There was a lot that went on. You know, the tech companies started to form out west. Is there any involvement that Operation Paperclip had in this aspect of the development of America that happened throughout this course of time?
100% responsible.
How so?
I mean, let's see how advanced the Germans were. Looking to Germany during World War II, there was no one that knew anything like that. And then when you start to actually uncover the documents of how far advanced they actually were, I mean, the Nazis were saying they had alien technology.
Do you believe that?
Suddenly they get over here.
Lou, let's talk about alien technology.
Yeah, 100%.
That is interesting enough to me. It's late enough. We can do that.
Yeah, without a doubt, 100%.
Hang on, I think it just said Luke got dropped. It's okay. So,
Luke?
yeah, well, whenever he joins us, I'll talk about him until the time being. Normally, y'all see Luke on camera with me. Guys, Luke is actually serving right now the party and some of the right candidates. He is up in D.C. right now on a political consulting job and has been joining us remotely, but I think maybe his Wi-Fi gave out. But anyway, we were talking, Garrett, about the possibility, of alien life form. Now, I know this is something that people like Elon Musk and NASA and people for generations back to Galileo have discovered, because we don't know exactly how far our universe goes out there and what other matter or even dimensions is, there could even be a parallel universe. I don't want to go on a tangent on that, but what info or what science did the Nazis gather or bring on this?
So a really interesting one I urge, and we'll have Aya put a link. So there was a project called Declassified, and I urge everyone to look into that. I'll just basically break it down real quick. So they were developing this, basically similar to technology, Tesla, not the company, the person, Nikola.
Yeah.
Technology he had discovered.
He was a boss too.
Engineered a craft, and they were using magnetic energy and frequency to create a vibrational device in the shape of a bell to transport humans through time and space. They obviously lost the war before they could complete the project, but it was discovered.
You know what? There was an Amazon show made about that too. Productions that relate specifically to this topic, I think, are useful to our listeners if they're divulging in this information. But the concept of this was the Nazis during the war, essentially what Hitler's Fourth Reich was, was undiscovered, because allegedly Hitler never finished it, is he had discovered they had built the science to travel to either to like another dimension where, there was a parallel universe. So there was a parallel universe, where, we won the war and, it's like it is. And then there was a parallel universe where the Nazis won the war, they built their Fourth Reich and they controlled the world and they could go to other dimensions. And then they started doing that and they started messing with all the dimensions. And then, as time went on, they just destroyed the universe with their selfishness. So on our last episode that we did, Garrett, with Luke, I know you weren't on it, but somebody brought up the idea of alien life form. And then we kind of backed up and said, okay, we don't know what alien life form is. It could be something that's not even visible to our eyes. It could be like the size of, cells, or, it could be microbiotic size or a centimeter tall that we couldn't even see.
Yeah.
Or they could be so big that we don't even, it's all the darkness that we don't even notice, or anything in between. They're not necessarily little green men that fly around in saucers that kind of look like weird humans.
They might even look like people.
Yeah, so what do you think it is that the Nazis were onto with this?
So last year, the head of the Israeli space program, who headed it for 25, 30 years, and is super accredited, super, a credible source as a government, as in the space program for Israel, a huge ally of the United States. This guy's well respected, speaks at universities around the world. He came out last year and said there's a galactic federation of 4 races of aliens that are running the planet Earth, and that China, Russia, Israel, and the United States know about it. He also said we have a base on Mars.
And now, I believe that we have something on Mars. We've had space programs, people going up for, over half a century now. And, let's be honest, there's been an arms race for the moon and space property. To be honest, countries that claim space land now will own it when we build more and more infrastructure there, and then sell it or use it properly. So it's free land right now. It's unclaimed land.
Yeah.
It's becoming more and more useful.
Elon Musk was trying to get there first. He's trying to get there and sell it back to us. Genius, by the way, guy's a genius.
What if Musk literally went and secured the entire solar system? It was like, if any of you fools want this, he starts putting prices on it.
Yeah. Part of the...
Did y'all see Star Wars? The big white, stormtroopers? There'll be, these Tesla stormtroopers that he starts deploying to guard all the planets.
He just overtakes the whole world.
He just overtakes it, and, no military force can beat him and, invade those planets.
That would be funny.
Yeah, drive around in little Tesla moon rovers.
That would be funny.
Sorry, I didn't want to get off on a tangent, but...
We're both on tangents. Well, the good thing about going off a tangent on the first episode of this series is we have a lot of stuff we can touch back on and focus on. That's kind of why I've been all over the place, is to give us a bunch of ideas, spitball, and then we can really draw and focus on certain things that hit home to our audience.
I agree. And we can go ahead and bring this to a close. We've been on this subject long enough. And again, I will put the sources in the video when you guys see this. But again, this series is Declassified, What Lies Behind America. We are going to go step by step throughout history with Garrett here with me, and talk about some of the biggest and most wild and controversial CIA operations and conspiracies over our last 100 years. So, thank you for being here with us tonight, Garrett.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. I enjoy talking about these subjects, obviously.
Yeah, we're excited too. And Aya, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Aya.
You still with us,
Not a
Aya?
problem.
There we go.
Yes, I am. I'm actually reading here. I found out that Hunters is the 2020 TV series that maybe that you guys are talking about.
Yes, Hunters is the one on Amazon that we were talking about earlier, where it takes place in the 50s or 60s or maybe early 70s, where they're Nazi hunters that discover Paperclip, and definitely worth watching on this subject.
You're right. So. And it got me very interested that I'm actually watching a little clip on it as Garrett is discussing it.
Perfect.
That's awesome.
I'm glad
to know that we were able to get at least some of our audience interested.
I think a lot will be watching about this since you got me hooked.
It's been a pleasure. You'll catch me on the next episode. Thank you very much.
Very good. Guys, this has been Declassified, What Lies Behind America. See you next time.